Hello and welcome to the This Works For Me Virtual Summit. I'm your host, Faith Watson. I am the director of the Faculty Development Center at Murray State University. In this summit, I will be having conversations with individuals who will be sharing practical strategies that have worked for them. And we hope that many of these strategies will be helpful to you in your quest to succeed in higher education and beyond. With me today is Kerry Foley. Kerry, I am delighted to have you. Thank you very much for taking the time to share with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
Sure. So I'm Kerry Foley. I am from Boston, Massachusetts, and I currently work as the manager of course design for the Division of Continuing Education at Harvard University. And what that means is that I work for both the Harvard Extension School and Harvard Summer School, and my team and I work to design amazing learning experiences for both on-campus and online courses. And we work very closely with faculty to help improve their courses, help them connect with their students, build community, innovate, many other things, all with the goal of creating significant learning experiences for our students.
Thank you so much. And I'm really looking forward to really getting deeper into this conversation with you. So could you tell us the title of your strategy? And for those of us who are not familiar, could you just explain what is formative feedback as well?
Sure. Yeah, so the title of my strategy is Offering Frequent Formative Feedback to Improve Students' Course Experience. And so for formative feedback for us here in our department is it's real-time feedback that optimizes learning. So in a classroom, this really means providing students with feedback in real time so that they can improve their learning experience throughout the experience, as opposed to waiting until the very end to find out how they did. So in the strategy that we're using, it's a little bit different because we're actually working with faculty to improve their courses. So this really actually means that we're using these principles of formative feedback in a new way to get feedback for the teaching staff, or in sometimes my case for the course designer, to, as the course happens term time, get real-time feedback so that we can know really how the students are feeling about the course, how they're interacting with course staff, what things are really helping them to achieve better learning experiences, and what things are distancing them or holding them back from really not only enjoying the class, but just getting the most out of it from an academic perspective.
Great, thank you for clarifying that. And I know that strategies like these are not new to individuals, but a lot of people really do not use them. Could you help us understand what impressed you to actually start using this strategy, and how has it worked for you?
Sure, yeah, and actually the way we kind of discovered the power of these was a little bit different than how we're actually using them. So I'll give you a little bit of backstory. So when my team was first sort of hired and designed, we were working with fully online courses. So essentially we took courses most often that had already been delivered on campus or in some other format for a while, and we decided let's optimize them for an online experience. And we had a lot of reasons for doing this. Some of them worked better online. Some of them we wanted to make sure that more students could experience the course. And so there were a lot of different reasons. And what we realized was just copying and pasting the course online didn't really work, right? So we essentially took courses, we were dismantling them and then putting them back together in a better way that would work better for online students. And, you know, a lot of places do this. And so there's a lot of really great sort of anecdotal evidence and all sorts of different frameworks you can use. But what we do at Extension that's a little bit different is that we really have a very strong faculty focus. So we want to make sure that we are extending Harvard faculty to the world. So the faculty member is really at the heart of the course. And so we don't necessarily always want to pitch the instructional design principles that we ordinarily would if we were just working directly with subject matter experts. In this case, we're working with the teacher themselves, so it can be a little bit different. So what we ended up doing was we were using the evidence that we had, but we really needed to collect a lot more evidence. And so when we were making these suggestions to faculty, we were making suggestions on how to change their course that they had been teaching for a long time. So it wasn't as simple as saying, oh, do it this way, or this works really well. And Harvard faculty we're all researchers here, we're all academics. Data means a lot to us. And so to just say, oh, this is going to be a really great idea, you should just try this, isn't very easy necessarily with Harvard faculty, because they want to know, what's the research? What are people really saying about this? So we realized that was something that we were going to have to provide to them very early on. So originally what we'd use these surveys for was actually in the prototype aspect of our design model. So what we would do is we'd meet with the faculty, we'd brainstorm ideas, we'd come up with the different modalities, the delivery options, talk about assignments, and then we would essentially build 1 week or 1 lesson in their course. And we would use that to evaluate. And so what we were very lucky, because a lot of the time these courses actually were being delivered live in real time on campus. So we could actually build an online week of a course and ask students taking that course what they thought. And what we found was that a lot of the ideas that we had were already on a really good path, but sometimes they needed some tweaking, or sometimes they were actually, in a lot of cases, I'm happy to report, the students asked for more of that throughout the course of the semester. So for example, we did an online week where we had frequent low stakes quizzing so that students could check their understanding throughout the course of the week. And students across the board were asking us, like, give us this in the rest of our semester. We don't want to just do it this week. We want to do it in future weeks and things like that, which was really helpful. But it also helped us to sort of tweak a little bit the maybe instructions, or some of the we were wrong about the motivators for certain things. And so it gave us an opportunity to test on real students what worked and what didn't work. Mm-hmm. And it helped build a lot of confidence with the faculty member in the decisions that we were making before we went and made those decisions for an entire semester course in the future. So it was one of those, sort of prototype feedback evaluation attempts that we actually found to be valuable in a lot of other different ways. So basically, we wanted to we started off sort of wanting to make sure that the faculty felt confident in our designs, but what we found was that this could be applicable sort of everywhere. So what we ended up doing actually was, of course, we used this for the full course redesigns, but then as time went on, we realized that our team could be doing work on more than just the courses we were fully designing, because there's only 3 of us as designers here, and we can't redesign every course. So we actually took a step back, and we started offering our services to all faculty in the form of smaller partnerships on targeted projects or design consultations. So people can sign up and meet with us, talk about maybe a problem they're having or an activity they're dying to do, and we can sort of work through it in an hour or 2, come up with some ideas, build them something. And one of the things that we do a lot is actually we tell people to use this frequent formative assessment. So what it has turned into in both our on-campus and online courses is an opportunity for faculty to ask their students how things are going in a low stakes and anonymous way. And so how we do this is we essentially build them Canvas. We use Canvas as our LMS, but you can do this in any LMS. If it's on campus, you can do it on paper if you want to. We ask short, open-ended questions. It's a very short survey in most cases, essentially asking them what's working, what's not working, and what else we need to know. And what we do is it's up to the faculty how often they want to do it. I typically recommend waiting until weeks 2 or 3, maybe to start doing the first one, because that way the students kind of get a sense of who you are, who your teaching staff is, who their peers are, and they get a sense of sort of where the course is going. Mm-hmm. And by giving them the opportunity to anonymously tell you what works and what doesn't, you have the opportunity now to find out, oh my gosh, this thing that I thought was going to be an awesome idea maybe isn't working that well. Why don't I tweak it before we get too far into the semester and it causes dissatisfaction among my students? But more importantly, you get to see, oh wow, the students really love it when I do this thing. I'm going to do more of that because it's really helping their learning. And what I have found personally when I read these surveys is that a lot of the things that are distancing for students are not things that I had ever imagined would be distancing. So to give you an example of this, one of the courses that I helped design was a statistics course. And it was a graduate level course, and it had about 150 students in it. And we offered sections basically every single day of the week. But on weekends, there was only one section, and it was Sundays at 11 o'clock a.m. So we thought, wow, it was one of our best attended sections. Students loved the ability to come on a weekend. It helped them out. It was all online. And so I thought, wow, this is a really great time for a section. And we sent out the quiz, and what we found out was that 11 o'clock on Sunday is when you go to church. when many people go to church. And so students weren't actually able to attend the easiest time slot for most of our students because it was interfering with a really, really important aspect of their life. So knowing that and hearing that, we thought, oh my gosh, you know, why didn't we think of that? And so we offered a second section on Sundays in the evening. So now students that maybe would go to church on Saturdays can go Sunday morning to section, and those that go to church on Sunday mornings can go on Sunday evenings to section. So we found that out in week 2 or 3, and all of a sudden this thing that could have been problematic for the whole semester was solved. And more importantly, students were really, really grateful that we asked them this and that we were willing to make the change. And so yes, obviously one of the big things about this was that it made the course better for students, but also it led to a feeling of connection and community within the course itself, because the students were hearing that their faculty cared. Exactly. That they were we were hearing what they were saying, we were listening to their needs, and we were making adjustments along the way to make it a better experience for them. And so we continued to ask these questions throughout the semester, and in this case, I think we did it every other week. Some people do it twice a semester, some people do it every week. But it really gave us an opportunity to make corrections in real time, to ramp up the things that students liked and to fix the things that they didn't like. And the benefit to us was that we didn't have to wait until the end of the semester to find out that students were unhappy the entire time over something that was a really simple fix. So, you know, this is something that we do in a lot of our courses. And the reason really is just to, you know, make sure the students are feeling connected to their faculty. They hear that they're listened to, they know that they're cared about. And we can actually make the course better by just asking them questions along the way.
Yes, Kerry, I really like the motive behind this strategy. Students are getting the impression, which is for real, that you really want to hear from them. What is it that's working? And I really commend you on that. So with this strategy, it seems as if it's going well, and there probably are no obstacles, right?
Oh, never.
So, okay, well, what are some challenges that are associated with this?
There are definitely challenges. I think the first one is, for most of our faculty at least, is that it takes a lot of time and effort to read these, especially in classes where you have 150 or 200 students. It's not, you know, a simple thing to just click through and see, you know, oh, okay, everyone loves it, everyone doesn't love it. I also think it's really nerve-wracking to ask people to anonymously tell you what you're doing wrong, right? So we phrase our questions in very specific ways. One of the ways that we ask for constructive feedback is we actually ask the question, what has been the most distancing for your learning so far? And so that's sort of an open-ended question where a lot of the time what we find is that the things that students are finding distancing don't really have much to do with the faculty necessarily. And so I think that kind of eases the anxiety around asking for that constructive feedback, but it can be very, very nerve-wracking to find out if things aren't going well. I know this personally because I teach a course, and as much as I push these surveys and I really highly recommend them, I did one last week and I was terrified to read the results of them. I was really worried that students, you know, weren't happy with something that I had worked really hard on. Maybe they didn't like me. I mean, there are a lot of things that really, you know, it on a personal level that it's difficult. So one way that I think is that I recommend to faculty, especially in courses that have a lot of students that are feeling that way, is to take advantage of your teaching staff. If you're really worried that maybe the students aren't happy with something you're doing, find a teaching staff member to compile some of the feedback, put it in a more constructive way so that maybe you're not feeling personally attacked, but you're, you know, and in all honesty, I've been doing this for 3 years and I very rarely have ever seen someone that wrote anything other than like a truly constructive and useful comment. Mm-hmm. It might just be that our students are very, very respectful, but I actually do think that it's because students really appreciate the opportunity to say, hey, this thing's not really working. So for those people that are hesitant for that reason, I totally hear you. It is not the easiest thing to do necessarily to open yourself up to that. But the upside is that you can hear about it now and fix it before it ends up in your full course evaluations for the dean or whoever else to read. So it is sort of a stopgap in that way. I think the other thing that is tricky is that sometimes we put a lot of emphasis on one comment, or, you know, or one student that doesn't like a particular aspect of the course. And it takes a lot of effort to remind yourself that sometimes students don't like the things that we do, and that's okay. If it's good for their learning, even if they don't want to do it, and we know it's good for them, then some of these things that they say are distancing, if they have something to do with the academics, we might have to just accept that they don't like. So that can be really hard because, you know, especially in a smaller class, when you hear one student say they don't like the discussion board or something, and you're like, oh my gosh, should I not use the discussion board anymore? And, you know, then you get 5 other comments that say that they love it. You know, you have to balance it. So you can't please everyone. And so there is a little bit of a risk associated with especially in smaller courses. The other thing that can be really tricky is figuring out how often to do it. Mm-hmm. So I've had instructors make this choice throughout the semester. Some folks have you do it every single week. What I found there, especially with the anonymous surveys, is that a lot of students by the 3rd or 4th week sort of they decide, you know what, no one's actually reading this, or I already told them last week, nothing's really changed. And so they have the tendency to sometimes get a bit impatient, or they just submit it without anything written. So I recommend strongly making sure that they are purposefully timed. So for example, like I said previously, waiting till the 2nd or 3rd week so that the students have a better sense of what the class is, so they can give a more informed commentary is really good. You know, making sure that it happens in the first half of the semester so that you have enough time to make those corrections if you're seeing the need for them. But also making sure that they know that they're going to get future opportunities. So don't just do it once, maybe do it in week 3, week 6, week 10. But, you know, give them the opportunity to do it. But maybe don't overburden them. So it's really up to you. It depends. You can also change the questions from week to week too, if there's specific things you really want feedback on. So for example, if you're doing a brand new activity and you're not really sure how it's going to go, you can ask the students, like, how did that go? Would you have liked a little bit more time? How would you recommend adjusting it? So that in future semesters, or even later on the semester, if you were to repeat a similar exercise, you have that feedback.
Wow, you really have addressed a lot of things, a lot of my questions too, because initially when you were talking in the beginning, I was thinking that, you know, perhaps there might be someone saying, okay, Kerry, that worked for you. I really don't think it could.
Yeah.
And I was just listening out for some preliminary steps that they could do, and you literally addressed a couple of those. But if there are any others that you would recommend, definitely. I really like the fact that you were so gracious enough to be able to share resources. Could you help us understand, describe a little bit about what resources you're going to be sharing with the group?
Sure. Yeah, so just to give you a bit of a framework for the website I'm about to share, so at Harvard Extension School, we work with adult part-time learners. They are our largest audience. So our student population tends to be a little bit different than a lot of other online schools. It's also very different from the other schools at Harvard. So we work with a lot of Harvard faculty, and then we work with faculty from other institutions as well. And so sometimes it can be a little bit tricky for our Harvard faculty to adjust to this different student population, because they're typically used to on-campus students. They're full-time students generally, and it's a residential program. So the opportunities to make connections and to hear feedback are a lot different than in an online course. And the students that are giving that feedback that they're designing these experiences for are in fact different. So to give an example of this, not releasing a reading through the reading list right away for an on-campus class might be okay, because your students have, you know, they're dedicated each week to doing all their reading. So if you give it to them a week in advance, they probably will be able to find the time to do the reading before class. Whereas with our adult students, it's a lot different, right? They work full time, they have children, maybe their spouse is sick. They have a lot of things going on. And so they have to be very, very strategic about their time. And this is actually something we hear a lot in the feedback surveys, is like, I need my readings on day 1 so that I can plan every Wednesday I'm going to do my readings, and, you know, and our students are incredibly well organized and purposeful. So as we were starting to work with Harvard faculty to tell them who our students were, we realized that we were actually making a lot of assumptions about who our students were, partially because we all take classes here as well, right? So we're, you know, oh, well, for me, this is how I would do things. And the biggest rule I always tell my instructional design students is, you are not your learner. So find out who they are and stop designing for you, design for them. And so we had the opportunity actually to work with this program called HILT, and it's the Harvard Initiative, Harvard Initiative for Teaching and Learning, or Learning and Teaching, I believe. I'm butchering that, HILT, H-I-L-T. And they offer grants for programs throughout Harvard to study things. And the thing that we wanted to study was actually creating real-time connections online for students. And so what we did was we hired student workers to go and interview a lot of our faculty, our students, and to compile all of the anecdotal evidence that they were finding that our students were telling them about what they wanted to see in our classes. And so one of the big things that we learned from this actually was that connection matters. And connection is not necessarily community in this case. So for example, students felt more connected to their faculty member if they were likely to get a response from them within 12 hours. So it's sometimes it's as simple as respond to my email and I will feel connected to you. But they also felt really connected when they had this opportunity to do these feedback surveys. So the resource I'm sharing is a website that we wrote. It's called Creating Real-Time Connections Online. And what it has is, it is focused mostly on promoting engagement in Canvas, but any of these strategies can work in any LMS. And so there are essentially 6 parts of this website. Connections is one of them. So this is all about reaching your students. We talk a little bit about feedback surveys, creating, section meetings, what you can do in sections. The next part is about community. So this is about, fostering peer communities in your classes. And this can work online and on campus. But some of the ideas that we give you are things like how to create purposeful icebreakers. How do you use online surveys and discussions to get your students talking to each other? What's the best way to facilitate group work online? Because that's a really difficult one. And then there's a whole part on feedback. And so this is about responding to student work. So this is automated feedback information, but there's also personalized and collective feedback. And this is all about, these are all just tips and recommendations that our students have said that they want from our faculty. And then there are also sections on expectations, so course organization, timely grading, how to communicate your plans with your students, and then things about questions, so Q&A forums, anonymous polling sections, things like that. And then there's a little bit about the team on this website as well. So I don't think you'll see me on this website, but you'll see my colleagues who were the recipients of the grant, but we all helped with it. So on this website, there is this piece about feedback, and we have a whole list of questions that you can consider using when you're designing the feedback surveys. You don't have to use all of them. I recommend maybe starting with 3. My favorite one is that at the end of all of my surveys, I say, what else do you want to tell me? Because I often find out things about my students that I wouldn't learn otherwise. So for example, like my wife is 8 months pregnant. I might miss class in the future. I'm feeling really concerned about that. So then I can send out an announcement and say, for those of you that have other things going on in your life, I totally understand. Here are some ways that you can get caught up if you miss a class. And then all of a sudden I'm alleviating some of that anxiety, but without telling the student exactly, I'm not calling out that particular student. So it's all sorts of questions on there. I really strongly recommend checking it out. Even if you don't have Canvas, I think a lot of the stuff can be applicable on an on-campus course, but as well as just across all the different learning management systems.
Well, that's an excellent resource, Kerry.
I hope so. I hope you guys like it.
Yeah, and I hope our viewers will really find it useful. So, Kerry, in the last minute, could you just leave our viewers with a challenge or an encouragement?
Yes. So this is from me, the faculty member, not me, the course designer, because so I think that's important, because what I'm about to tell you is that it is really not easy to get outside of your comfort zone and do this. I completely understand that. The course designer in me says, oh my gosh, this is going to help you. You should do it. The faculty member in me says, I'm going to have to read this about myself, and it can be really, really difficult. So I think it's okay to be nervous, but as faculty members, we know that we love making our students feel a little bit outside their comfort zone. That's when the best learning happens. So my challenge is step outside your comfort zone, try one, see what happens. If you like it, continue. If you don't, scrap the idea. But be open to the feedback, because I promise you, you're going to hear more good stuff than bad stuff from your students, and they will appreciate it.
Wow, well said. Thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you for having me. This was very fun. I hope it helps people.
Oh yes, I'm sure it will. And for our viewers, I want to thank you so much for tuning in today, and I encourage you to share this conversation with others. All are welcome to subscribe, and of course I'll be providing the link to the summit resources, and I hope that you will tune in to the next episode of this Works For Me virtual summit. See you soon.